Welcome to Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association. You can find us at LCARA.net, on Facebook, on YouTube, and on Instagram. If you're enjoying the videos we're producing here at LCARA, please help our club out by hitting that subscribe button. Also, give us some feedback on our videos. Click the like button, share with anybody who may find it interesting, and be sure and hit the bell icon to make sure you get notified of the next video release. Hello folks, this is Chris, KY4CKP, and today we're going to take a look at one of the aspects to creating a custom DMR code plug, and going to be specifically talking about the 578 UV3 Pro from Anytone. So that's what's coming up in the next segment. So get your programming software, whatever radio you have. Of course, Bridgecom has the versions, the specific custom versions for the different DMR radios they have, and they have some code plugs. So here at the Bridgecom site, download a code plug. It's right there, and they've got some by state. These are just ones that users have created and submitted, and so they don't guarantee those or anything. A bunch of red text there at the top, but some people have created these and even regional ones around the world and some things. And so depending on what state you live in, these may give you a big leg up in getting some things programmed into your radio. Of course, the first thing I noticed here, nobody has officially submitted one, officially, unofficially, submitted one for the state of Kentucky. So the best I could do would be to grab one and use it as sort of a template or something, which is one of the ways we're going to learn a lot of new skills, is go see what somebody else did, sort of work back from there a little bit, and I certainly did some, and I'm still doing some of that with getting into DMR code plugs. So I went out. I'm not going to try to show every resource. I spent many hours over several days and continuing to do so. Download a couple of code plugs. Got one from David here with bars, to help give me a leg up on some of the bare essentials that I needed, and I've begun to build a very simplistic code plug to get some things going. So that's kind of what you're going to have to do. Now with the other thing I wanted to show here with Repeaterbook. Right, so a lot of us use Repeaterbook. We may have an app on our phone so we can reference it quickly, and on our main computers and things. It's a great resource regionally around the world and everything. So here I've just did a search, 2-meter repeaters in Kentucky, just wherever you live. Notice they have an export here in Repeaterbook. Export data, chirp style, RT system style, just regular comma separated value file that you could put into Excel or bring into a system, and some different kinds of radios and things, Kenwood style and whatnot. And notice they've got the Anytone 868. They don't have the 578. They got the 868. So that ought to be pretty close, and I'm sure it is pretty close, but it's not exact. And it may still sort of be considered beta, but that's the thing is, they're obviously not trying to do every radio known to man, but they've put a few things in here, again, at least to give us an example or a leg up. But you're probably going to have to do some fine tuning, and that's what I had to learn and ran into and got some help with, because I didn't want to have to manually program in huge numbers. If we take a look at this list, and it's by no means the full capacity of the radio. Let's go back to the top of the list. So I've got a section that Dave helped put together, a couple of sections here that Dave at Bars helped put together, of some of the digital talk groups and things. You'll recognize some of those if you're already into DMR. But of course, what I wanted to do is I wanted to add, plenty of analog repeaters and things too, because radio obviously does analog and digital. And what he sent me was a couple of zones, a couple of talk groups, and things worth of some of the digital configurations, which was again a big leg up. But how do I get in all of these other repeaters that I wanted to bring in? And eventually, maybe even more, again, maybe do that thing where I have my custom code plugs depending on where I'm going, maybe for work that week, and I could just dump in a custom code plug, and that was just regionally, configured kind of more regionally. I mean, you've got lots of, I mean, this radio, what does it have, 4,000? Let's go to the bottom real fast. Yeah, like 4,000 memory locations. What are you going to do with all those? Usability, right? Usability is always going to be a factor there. But how do we get here, right? How do we get to having all these? You see, we're under the channel section of the software here, and that's where to like extract from an external resource, excuse me, like Repeaterbook, it is a little bit of a challenge. It's not kind of built in quite as nicely and streamlined as Chirp or RT systems. Now it is doable, but it's just going to take a little hands-on work. So let's take a look at some spreadsheets or some CSV files is what they are, but open them up in Excel. I'm going to bring two of these up. I just want to show a couple things. Now the top one is the channel.csv, so it may also help. Let me bring in just a folder. So this is an export of what I've pretty much got currently configured for this, this 578. So when you do a full export of the DMR code plug with the software, these are all the files that get created. Right, there's a lot of sections and pieces and parts, and I'm not claiming to be an expert on hardly any of this, certainly yet. You don't have to worry about every single feature and component immediately, which of course is always the good news. But there's that channel.csv file. That's just one of the files that's going to get created, out of those sections in the software, for the so-called code plug. And so if we take a look at that file, just that one file, here in this top, right, I'll offset these for a second. Here in the top, you can see the listing going down through there. Okay, so just not quite 300 line items so far. Two sections are for the digital talk groups and things that Dave helped put together for me. And as I was looking at what he sent me to use that as a bit of a learning template, then I'm trying to think, how do I get a bunch of, say, analog repeaters without having to program them manually, which you could do. And I was trying to, and I kind of knew before I even reached out to Dave, and I had started kind of going down this path, how can surely I could do some kind of an import or export. Because I looked at a code plug or two, and I saw these CSV files, and I thought, okay, so we've got to, get this format, and you can do an import with the software. Let me bring it back up for a second. Let me get these files since I like to auto hide my toolbar down there. So if we come down and if we bring up the programming software for the 578, if you go to do an export, if you're going to do an export, you've got the different sections. You can export everything, which is how I created this folder that we see here. Right, this was just an export of everything, and it'll go ahead and just create all these files. Okay, and then you can save that and edit them or re-import, right? Or you can export a single thing, so like just the channels list. If you just want to work, or you've done something with the channels list or whatever. So you can do the individual components as you see on the left, or you can just do everything up there at the top. And therefore you can work on a file manually. You can import it back in. And that's what I saw that, and I was trying to work with that, but it just wasn't working. It seemed somewhat obvious. I do work in the IT field. I'm a little bit used to some of that kind of thing, working with computers and so forth, and a little bit working with those other packages, Chirp and RT systems. But it just wasn't working, and I was definitely struggling with that a little bit. So I reached out to Dave because I knew, and he had been sending out some emails. He's very active with bars, but I knew specifically he was working with DMR, and I knew he would be a resource. And so I reached out to him, and he said, "Yeah, I've got a little bit of a co-plug oriented for for us, for the state of Kentucky, and I can help share that with you, and again give me a functional learning template to work with." And so when he sent that to me, I greatly appreciated it. So I started to take a look. Well, when I compared, and that's what I'm wanting to show you here, when I compared the structure of the file he sent me, which was a known, known good working structure, to what I was able to get exported from Repeaterbook, using that 868 style, which is it's just not exactly the same as the 578. There's three, the 868, 878, 578. They all three have their own programming software. It's all slightly different, or at least different levels of development. And so that was what I noticed. When you just simply like line up these spreadsheets, the CSV files, the columns are just not exactly the same. The one that Dave sent, the one for the 578, there was more columns, and a couple of things were in a little bit different order than what I was able to export from Repeaterbook. And so that was what I had to do, is I had to slowly go through and take a little bit of time and kind of get them to match up. And if it was missing a column, just put it in. If something was offset a little bit, I had to put in some extra fields here and there, or an extra column, and pretty much get them to pretty well line up with what I'd known was a good functioning version. You got the headers there at the top. If you look at the K column up here, and then you can look at the K column down here, contact, and you just had to get them to line up. So doing this completely from scratch, there's lots of videos out there that talk about programming a code plug from scratch, or at least kind of getting started. This is how I approached it, having experience in the IT world, having experience with Chirp and RT systems. This was the first thing I wanted to do. I want to be able to dump a bunch of, say analog repeaters, 2 meters, 70 centimeters, right, whatever they are, and then also have some of those digital talk groups and things in there. So I got help with the talk groups and then the digital side, and then I was okay. I should be able to use this concept to help get those analog ones in there. And that's what Dave said too. He said, yeah, you just have to kind of massage, as we say in the old days, massage the data by hand a little bit. But if once you've got a nice template of what it should look like, for your particular radio, it wasn't too hard. At that point, it wasn't too hard to, again, add a few fields here and there, a column here and there, and get things to line up a little bit. Because even just looking at this right here, you can tell that things are not quite, the bottom one here, again, is just out of Repeaterbook. If you see my file name up there, Repeaterbook export. And it just some things didn't line up 100%. So I spent a little bit of time with it, got it to line up pretty well, and I was able to get it to import, finally import and work on my radio. And so that's one of the things, again, that there's going to be some learning curve with this stuff, and I'm still at the very beginning, pretty much, of all this. But that was the first thing that I ran into, and so that's why I wanted to cover as a real beginner's introduction to code plugs. You can find some examples out there of one kind or another, and putting in some of the DMR stuff is covered. But so far, I hadn't really seen this topic covered. So that's why I wanted to do a video on this. How do I, do an export out of Repeaterbook, let's say, like I'm kind of used to doing maybe with these other tools, and get that into my radio. So I'm not programming every single thing by hand. You can do the export from Repeaterbook, but then you're just going to probably have to take a look at the file, compare it to the very specific formatting of a known good file, massage that data a little bit, and then you can do an import. It's not nearly as built-in and seamless and smooth as the other tools have. Of course, I'm sure there was a day when they weren't quite as feature-rich and smooth. Hopefully, these other tools are heading in that direction with some of these features. But it can be done. Take some time, try not to get frustrated with it, and reach out for help, just like I did. I was on the right path, and I suspected I was, but it wasn't working either. So I reached out for help and got a leg up. And again, there's a lot of people that can help you do that. Now, again, I'm not an expert on this stuff. Again, that's why we mentioned explore the clubs in your area. Explore a club, maybe even remotely. Whether it's LCARA or somebody else, because again, they tend to be a repository of information. We've got club members that are uh, pretty knowledgeable about DStar. We've got some of our folks who are pretty knowledgeable about C4FM and whatever else it is. I don't know that we have too many folks into DMR in LCARA down there in that region, because our repeaters are C4FM and there is some DStar things happening. There might be a couple of folks that are more into DMR that I hadn't just haven't explored that with them, or realized that was one of their skill sets or knowledge. But get with your clubs, right? Get with your clubs. You'll probably find some of that really key critical information you might need, or experience with a radio, or just whatever it is. So that's pretty much it. I just wanted to talk about that as far as being able to get maybe larger numbers of repeaters and things imported into your radio, so you don't necessarily do everything by hand, especially maybe if you like to have different setups. Like say for Brian and I traveling regionally, we tend to do that, or we've gotten in the habit of being able to do that because the other kinds of software do make that pretty easy to do. You can still kind of do some of that here. You just have to be maybe a little more hands-on. But you can import and export that data from Repeaterbook. Just remember, you're just going to have to spend a little bit of time with the export to get it to match up exactly what your radio, or at least the software for your radio may be expecting and may require. It's not impossible, but it's a little bit more hands-on than the built-in stuff to something like Chirp or RT systems. So that's what I want to cover in this first video. That's more than enough for now. Not trying to claim I'm an expert on DMR code plugs, but this was just one of the first things I ran into, and did kind of finally figure out a workaround, at least for now. So that'll do it for this. Just a brief introduction to one of the aspects of creating DMR code plugs. So this is Chris, KY4CKP, for Lake Cumberland Amateur Radio Association, 73.